So, first, we'll talk about what is digital accessibility. Digital accessibility is a practice ensuring that content, resources, and technology communicated electronically can be used regardless of ability, disability, or assistive technology. Or put more simply, it's removing barriers to access information and services that we provide to the public. Many of us are familiar with accessibility features in the physical space, curb cuts and sidewalks to accommodate wheelchairs, or a crosswalk signal that produces visual cues or sounds. These innovations removed barriers for people. We apply this same principle to digital content to ensure that people with disabilities are not denied equal access to information. Inaccessible web content can exclude people with disabilities, just like steps at an entrance can exclude people who are using wheelchairs. We create so many types of publications, and digital accessibility requirements apply to all of them: web pages, forms, apps and maps, and documents. For this training specifically, we're going to be focusing mostly on documents. We will go over the basics of accessibility that apply to everything we create and share online. And this includes emails and correspondence, things that you might not think about as being online content. But think about it like this: digital accessibility applies to anything anyone might view in a web browser. People use web browsers to access their emails, so anything sent by email also needs to meet these requirements. Also, any documents that we any documents we produce might be posted on One Stop or to our file review request website. So making sure that we are creating everything with accessibility in mind will ensure that these documents are ready to be posted and won't require a lot of effort on the back end to make them acceptable for posting. And when making our content accessible, it's important to keep in mind that disabilities affect people in all different ways. It could be an auditory, cognitive, physical, or visual disability. According to the CDC, 1 in 4 Americans have a disability. It's one of the largest minorities in the country, and it's one that anyone can join at any time, whether it be from aging, chronic conditions, or even injuries leading to potentially temporary disabilities. People with these disabilities often use assistive technologies to help them navigate the physical and digital world. One of the most used tools for digital content is a screen reader. People of a wide range of abilities use screen readers. Most people think screen reader users are blind, but according to a survey, 1 in 5 users are not. They could have low vision, a learning disability, or the inability to use a mouse on their computer. These assistive tools are great, but they can only remove barriers if the digital content is created to be accessible in the first place. And that's where we come in. So, digital accessibility guidelines were developed around 4 principles with the acronym POUR. Content needs to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Users need to be able to interpret or be aware of everything on the screen. Make sure that your content is navigable, so the structure helps a user find content and keep track of their location. Making sure it's readable and understandable to the broadest of audiences possible. And making sure it adapts to different browsers and assistive devices. There are quite a few citations of law that require digital accessibility. We have the federal laws, are the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was signed in 1990. Specifically, Title II requires that state and local governments give people with disabilities an equal opportunity to benefit from all their programs, services, and activities. You'll hear the reference to this law the most often. We use ADA, the acronym, and ADA compliant often as shorthand for digital accessibility when we're talking about our documents. The other federal law is the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Section 504 of the Rehab Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in programs conducted by federal agencies and programs receiving federal financial assistance. Federal funding is at risk with noncompliance with the Rehab Act. Section 508 of the Rehab Act establishes requirements for electronic and information technology developed, maintained, procured, or used by the federal government, and again, for programs that are funded through federal money. There's also the Plain Writing Act of 2010, which requires agencies to provide, quote unquote, clear government communication that the public can understand and use. Plain writing is also critical for individuals whose disability may include cognitive delay. So to be compliant with these laws, we need to create our content according to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. This is a set of technical standards that instruct how to comply with ADA Title II. These requirements are reinforced in the state of New Hampshire accessibility policy that applies to all state agencies. This policy specifically requires state agencies ensure that our IT solutions and digital communications are accessible to the public and employees by following these WCAG standards. And I'll just let you know right now that I'm going to be saying WCAG a lot in this training. So that basically WCAG and ADA are the two acronyms that you're going to need to remember, and I'm going to talk about a lot because all of our guidelines are WCAG. So the legal ramifications of being non-compliant with these laws, it opens us up to potential lawsuits and federal audit. People who cannot access our content due to these barriers can sue us, and it's not an abstract notion. Our own state Department of Education actually went through this years ago, and the settled conclusion of that lawsuit resulted in their websites being audited and monitored by the federal government for several years. They were only just recently able to move out of that conservatorship. And there's also currently a case in Louisiana where a blind man is suing them because he could not use several of their state websites. This one's still working its way through the courts. And the DOJ actually has several cases that they've started against state government agencies over noncompliance on their websites. And there's a website that is included in a later resources that I'll provide where you can go and look at some of those cases that the DOJ has brought against states. And as mentioned on the last slide, noncompliance opens us up to the loss of federal funding under the Rehabilitation Act. So these laws and the state policy have been established for decades. What's new and what was the impetus for these trainings is a rule that was published in the Federal Register in April 2024. It's an update to the ADA Title II that aims to bridge the digital accessibility gap as more and more government agencies are putting their services and digital platforms in the decades since these laws were enacted. Our websites, online forms, databases, mappers, etc., provide a convenience for our customers, and equal access to that content is required under these laws, just like if they were visiting us in person and requesting information. This new rule clarifies this and provides technical guidance for how to be compliant with WCAG. And the deadline for state agencies to be compliant is April 24th, 2026. There are a few stated exceptions to the rule, and the good news is we do not have to go backwards and make all of our current online content ADA compliant. The rule makes an exception for archived or old unused content. If the content is being kept online for reference, research, or record keeping, such as old reports, meeting minutes, or an old document like a flyer, it's okay to leave it as is. This new rule only applies if the document, this exception only applies if the document remains unchanged. If it's decided to update the document, then that revision must include bringing it up to the WCAG standards. And then we have one exception to this exception, which is if it's a high priority document that's viewed regularly or used to apply for or participate in state services, it needs to be brought into compliance. So when you're looking at your documents, these are some of the things that we have to determine on what would be considered old and archived and what would be considered high priority, regularly used, or used for state services, to apply for state services. So before we get into the actual requirements, the WCAG that we're going to be discussing, I want to reiterate that the focus of this training is on our DES created and DES owned publications, including anything we pay contractors to create for us, not documents submitted from external parties and posted to OneStop. The guidelines we will discuss today must be applied to all documents we create or commission others to create for us. Now, the good news is we are currently in really great shape. The DOIT has acquired software that crawls our websites and flags problems for us. All of our main websites are currently set up in this system. We also already have a process in place for review of all updates to web pages, documents, and forms before they are published. And our public information guidelines, which are enshrined in our branding policy, detail all of these accessibility standards that I'm going to be discussing with you today. We also have a team of 60 employees who we call web techs in all bureaus across the agency who are trained on these accessibility requirements, and they can assist programs by reviewing your documents and your web update requests. So we need to take it to the next level. Look up any information about digital accessibility and you will see the advice is the same. It's always better to create your content with accessibility in mind, not fixing content to be accessible later. While there are tools available to assist in making our documents accessible, they don't catch everything. Therefore, the agency is focusing on ensuring that all staff know what the requirements are and that programs begin the work of ensuring their content meets the WCAG standards. For many, this will mean reviewing your default settings in Microsoft applications like Outlook, Word, and PowerPoint, and reviewing and updating any template emails, notification letters, and high priority documents that your programs have to make sure that they are compliant.